This is Ace the Yogi, and you're listening to the Sacred Koi podcast, where ancestral wisdom meets embodied healing. Over recent years, many Black and Brown communities have begun returning to their sacred roots, not just out of curiosity, but out of necessity. On this show, I explore what it truly means to reclaim our bodies and to live in our power through conversations on spiritual remembering, sexual liberation, and Black joy. I titled this first episode Homecoming because for so many of us, the path of healing has felt much like wandering through the desert of a foreign land. We've been taught to look for salvation and sources outside of ourselves, whether through generic self help books, rigid corporate structures, or even false spiritual leadership claiming they can heal us through monthly donations. Many of us have been convinced to seek out liberation through spiritual practices that were stripped of their color, their rhythm, and their compassion. But a homecoming is the radical act of returning to the territory of your own skin. It is the steady process of finding your way back to the wisdom that already lives within your DNA and your breath. It's the moment you realize that the autonomy you've been searching for was never lost. It was just buried under the noise of a world that didn't know how to value you. This episode and this podcast is the invitation to set down that heavy luggage of who you were told to be and finally walk through the front door of who you actually are. So, why the name Sacred Koi? For me, it's about a specific kind of strength. In many traditions, the koi is known as the fish that chooses its own path. While the current pulls everything downstream towards what's easy, the koi has this natural instinct to swim upward. It's a fish that defines its own direction, even when the water is heavy. I think many of us feel that same weight, the pressure to go with the flow, fit in, and ignore that voice inside of us that wants something more harmonious and authentic. For us, that current is the relentless pressure of colonization and the silent, soul deep curse of assimilating that tells us to stay in line. This is especially personal for me because I'm a Pisces. If you look at the symbol for Pisces, it's often shown as two koi fish circling one another in a steady flow. In the zodiac, Pisces is represented by the duality of the two koi fish, a constant dance of opposing forces. And even if you don't subscribe to the belief of zodiacs, you can still feel the truth in that duality through the lens of yin and yang. It's that same balance, that dance of harmony, which I'll actually dive into much deeper in a later episode. To be a sacred koi is to recognize that our growth requires us to swim against the grain while honoring the ebb and flow of our own internal tides. It's the spiritual technology of persistence, knowing that when we reach the source of our own ancestral truth, we are transformed from survivors into architects of our own destinies. And the space, being a sacred koi, is about having the courage to swim towards your own truth and trusting that our bodies already know the way home. Who am I? Before we continue to walk this path together, I want to tell you a little bit about who is walking beside you. My name is Ace, though I also go by Ace the Yogi or by my given Igbo name, Ifunanya. I identify as non binary, using they them pronouns to capture the fullness of the duality I carry. At my core, I see myself as a spiritual being having a human experience, a manifestation of conscious energy. My own journey has never been a straight line. It's been a life drifting between worlds and across continents. In fact, I moved 12 times before my freshman year of high school, a history that taught me how to find home within myself when the world around me was constantly shifting. Professionally, I bring the weight of that experience into my work as a holistic sexual health coach, board certified sexologist, trauma informed yoga instructor, and cultural consultant. I've had the honor of training over 3,000 individuals on everything from racial equity and social emotional learning to pleasure advocacy and mindfulness. Beyond those titles, I am a student of life and lineage. My work exists at the intersection of Pan Africanism and the transformative teachings of the Champa Kagyu lineage of Tibetan Buddhism. These worlds live together for me. They are a unified map that allows me to experience this life through the interconnectedness of all things. This map allows me to see the body as an archive. Your body remembers the boundaries you didn't set, the desires you tucked away to stay safe, and the energy you've exhausted trying to be palatable. I've had to navigate that curse of assimilating myself, the exhausting work of shrinking to fit into spaces that weren't built for my fullness. And through my studies and my travels, I found that the antidote to that curse is actually just courage. It takes courage to establish and maintain personal ownership of one's life. This podcast is a space to help bridge the gap between that wisdom of our ancestors and the practical grounded healing we need right now. The compass. Because this journey is about returning to ourselves, I want to be clear about the lens we're using to find our way back. You'll hear me talk about these paths as one unified way of existing in the world. When I speak about Afrocentrism, I'm talking about the simple, radical act of centering our own stories. It's about looking at our lives through our own eyes first, rather than trying to translate our magic into someone else's language. We aren't the alternative here, we are the source. When I talk about the Tibetan 5 elements, I'm speaking to the actual energies of the fire, earth, air, water, and space elements that live inside of us and make up everything within our reality. These elements serve as a guide for understanding our energetic and physical bodies. For instance, if you're feeling flighty or scatterbrained, we would look to ground your earth or steady your fire. But if you're feeling stuck, we would look to balance the movement of your air. This is our way of honoring the truth that we are a part of the natural world, not separate from it. We hold all of this within the reality of intersectionality. We honor the truth that our healing is shaped by every part of who we are: our gender, our race, our ethnicity, our sexuality, our culture, and our lived experiences. We embrace our own complexity because that is where our real power lives. We refuse to flatten ourselves just to be understood. Reclaiming joy and pleasure. If homecoming is the radical act of returning to the territory of your own skin, then we must be willing to reclaim our own joy and pleasure as an act of resistance to the powers that seek to keep us disconnected. When I talk about reclaiming joy, I'm not speaking of some abstract constructs or ideas. I'm actually looking at the internal chemistry of our own autonomy. Inside your body, you have these incredible chemical messengers that act as both neurotransmitters and hormones. Don't worry too much about the technical definitions right now. Just think of them as the chemical language your brain and body use to communicate with one another. They are the signals that tell your system when it's safe to rest, when it's okay to feel good, and when it's time to connect. There are 3 primary messengers I want to introduce right now, which you may already be familiar with. They are oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin. Oxytocin is known as the love hormone that flows when we feel safe and physically held. Dopamine is the feel good reward hormone that drives us toward what actually nourishes us. And serotonin is the stabilizing, happy hormone that acts as an anchor to keep us grounded. Understanding these on a physical level can help us to see that joy itself is biologically necessary for a functioning, healthy spirit. Joy and pleasure go hand in hand, though the meaning and connection to pleasure that we have been conditioned to intellectualize has unfortunately been bastardized. While sexual pleasure is a sacred act of our experience, the truth is that pleasure is expansive. In my work, we break it down into four distinct forms. We experience emotional pleasure, sensual pleasure, spiritual pleasure, and sexual pleasure. For the sake of this episode, I won't dive any deeper into the unique differences of each of these, but they definitely carry a distinct energy and wholeness to them. For now, I just want you to begin using your imagination to expand your own view of what pleasure can look and feel like for yourself. Reclaiming our connection to all forms of pleasure and joy is about giving ourselves permission to experience the full landscape of our own wholeness without apology or explanation. The pursuit of joy is far from luxury. It is a vital tool for personal liberation and resistance. As Cleaver Cruz of the Black Joy Project says, and I quote, amplifying Black joy is not about dismissing our collective pain. It's about using that joy as an entry into understanding the oppressive forces we navigate through as a means to imagine and create a world free of them, end quote. So by reconnecting to the things that bring us joy, we naturally resist oppression. And I want to be very direct with you. This path includes a hidden sacrifice. I believe healing and pain often walk together. This process requires us to shed old skins and to detach from the versions of ourselves that were built only for survival. This is deep shadow work. I often look at this through the four stages of healing trauma, where numbness leads to irritation, irritation leads to pain, and pain eventually brings us back to function. Again, I'll dive much deeper into these four forms of healing from trauma and the science of pleasure in later episodes, but I wanted to mention them here so that you know if this process feels hard or heavy, it is because you are moving through the fire so that something new, something truly whole can transform and be reborn. The road ahead. I'm so honored that you've chosen to drift through this growth with me. I've already sat down with some incredible friends and colleagues to bring you my first few deep dive conversations. We'll be exploring the depths of assimilation, the power of storytelling, and pathways towards healing through trauma. This is a homecoming. This is a return to the source. If this resonates with your spirit, I invite you to join my inner circle of this journey over on Substack. While you can listen to my podcast on any platform, Substack is where I share the deeper archives, and it's the space where we can actually engage and talk through these episodes together. You can also find me on Instagram at Sacred Koi Podcast, or explore more resources in my blog at acetheyogi.com. So until next time, stay fluid and courageous, because your freedom lives on the other side of fear. I'm Ace the Yogi, and this is the Sacred Koi Podcast. I love you.